In the last lecture, we made sure that our navigation items and the logo and everything looks good on both desktop and mobile devices. That's cool. Let's now make sure we also have a backdrop behind the side drawer, and I also, of course, want to ensure that we can open and close it dynamically. Let's start with the backdrop. The backdrop should be behind the side drawer, and we already have a backdrop component in the UI folder. But how do we best add it to the side drawer? Well, just as I added it to the modal, I included it in the modal component, I want to include it in the side drawer component too because it belongs to the side drawer. So for that, I will import the backdrop in my side drawer component file. So import backdrop from, and now let's go up 2 levels, then into the UI folder, into the backdrop folder, and import it from the backdrop.js file. And let's add backdrop here in the side drawer. Now I got this wrapping element which basically styles my side drawer, and the modal should sit outside of it. Otherwise it would be contained inside the side drawer, and that's of course exactly not what I want. Outside of it yields the problem that we have adjacent JSX elements, but we can simply import our auxiliary component to still be able to do that. So let's navigate all the way up to the HOC folder and import the auxiliary component from the aux.js file. Now I'll simply add the auxiliary component as a wrapper around this component, and it should now work. And modal, of course, is wrong. This is backdrop here. So with that, we get a backdrop as part of the side drawer too. If we reload the application, we don't see that though. Where is the backdrop? Well, if you inspect the backdrop, you of course realize it has this show property which needs to be true to actually display it. So of course we can simply set show like this, and since it's a Boolean property, we don't need to assign a value. Just by adding it, it will be set to true. If it's not present like before, it will be set to false. So now we got the backdrop. Looks nice. Of course, this should not always be visible though. The side drawer should only be shown sometimes once we click the menu button essentially, and it should also be closed once we click the backdrop. So for that we need to register a click listener on the backdrop, and actually we already have one. We have that click listener clicked, which can fire any method we want to fire. So the goal is to now be able to handle this method in the side drawer. Now in the modal, we simply propagated this click up, so up to our holding container. Here in the side drawer, I also want to do this. We could also turn the side drawer into a stateful component and handle the click in here with a method and with a state which we switch from show, so from true to false and so on. And there would be nothing wrong with it, but we will also trigger the side drawer from the toolbar in the end, because there we'll have this menu button. So in the end, we also need to create a connection from toolbar to side drawer, and we have that connection already. It's the layout component. This is where we use both. So in my opinion, it makes more sense to turn the layout component into a class component where we can implement the method, so that we can listen to both the side drawer closing itself by clicking on the backdrop, as well as the toolbar opening the side drawer by clicking on that toggle button. So therefore, this is the next step. I'll turn my layout here into a class layout, and it should extend a component therefore. So import component from React, and here simply extend it with the extends keyword. Now inside that layout class, we need the render method as you learned, and there we should return some JSX, and we got the JSX here. So let's simply cut it and enter it here, remove that stuff down there, and props can now be accessed with this props as you learned. That's the case for all class-based components. Now the name changed to layout with a capital L due to the naming convention, so let's also adjust the export down there. Now with that we got our layout component changed, it's now a class. Now we can implement a method here, and I will call this method side drawer closed handler. You can of course take any name you want. I'll use this syntax where I assign a ES6 arrow function to a property so that this keyword inside this method will refer to the class at all times. And we also need to manage some state in here. State, which I'll set up here, should essentially contain the information if the side drawer is visible or not. So here I'll set up show side drawer and set this to false initially maybe. Well, let's set it to true for testing so that we can see it. And in side drawer closed handler, I'll call this set state and set show side drawer to false, of course, like this. So now I need to pass this event handler method here to my side drawer, and I'll name it closed. There we want to execute this side drawer closed handler. So now we have to use that closed property in the side drawer, and there I'll use it to simply pass it on to the backdrop where I have this clicked property, which will simply pass me the onClick event basically. So there I want to pass on props closed. So simply setting up this chain where I pass down the method reference to the place where I handle the click in the end. So with that, show of course should also be bound dynamically. Show should be bound to, well, whatever we want to name it. Let's say props show would make sense, but to not confuse it with this show, let's name it open. So this open property then needs to be set on the side drawer. So back to the toolbar, we need to pass, back to the layout, we need to pass the open property to the side drawer too now, and that should be this state show side drawer, because this will hold the information whether the side drawer should be opened or not. With these additions, if we now save all the files and we go back, we should still have the backdrop, but if we click it, it should dismiss the backdrop. It doesn't dismiss the side drawer yet because we haven't added any logic to do so. Let's add this logic now. And in the side drawer, remember that I added this open and close CSS class in the side drawer CSS file. I want to attach these classes conditionally because they will basically move the side drawer out of the page or into it, and they will play an animation with it due to that transition property here. So therefore we need to conditionally attach the open or close CSS classes, and in the side drawer component, that is the part I want to do before I return code here, before I return JSX. I want to create a constant which I'll name attached classes, and there that should always contain my side drawer class, but the next element in this array by default could be the closed class. So classes close. That's of course referring to that closed CSS class. Now the open class should be added when open, that property, is true. So I will then check if props open. If this is true, the attached classes should actually not have the close class, but the open class. So let me turn this from a constant to a variable so that I can reset it here. Attached classes should now be an array where I do have my side drawer, but where I also have my open class. And now I can use that down here where I assign a class name. I won't assign classes side drawer. I will assign my attached classes instead. And since we can't pass an array of strings here, but should pass a single string, I'll join that string into a single string with white spaces in between the items, so in between my CSS classes. Now with that, we should have a drawer which actually can disappear as soon as we click the backdrop. And it does. Next step is to create this toggle button here to also move it in once we click that button.